This week's parsha, we have a double parsha, Matas Masoi. I wanted to talk about the Masois in the beginning of Parshas Masoi. In the beginning of the parsha, it says, Eila, Maisi b'nei Yisrael. These were the travelings of b'nei Yisrael, Sheyotzu me'eretz Mitzrayim, Tzivoisam, b'yad Moshe v'Aaron. And then it says, Vayichtav Moshe. Hashem gave it tzivui to Moshe to write it down as Moitzayehem L'Maseim. Their Moitzayim means to go forth according to their travelings, Al Pi Hashem. And then it says again, Maseim L'Moitzayehem. These are their travelings that they went forth. So we're going to discuss, first of all, you see very clearly that this was all written down Al Pi Hashem. It wasn't just a story that you might think, the Torah is telling you a nice story of something happened here, they traveled, but this was done Al Pi Hashem. Obviously there was a reason Hashem wanted Moshe to write this all down. And secondly, what's this pasuk doubling the lashon as Moitzayehem L'Maseim in the beginning of the pasuk, and then again Maseim L'Moitzayehem at the end of the pasuk. As you look at Rashi, Rashi says over here, at the end of the Rashi, the first Rashi, Rab Tanchuma Dorish Boy Drasha Acheres Moshe Lamelech Shahaya Benoi Chayla. His son was sick. V'lichel Makom Rachi sent him far away to a doctor to get better. And when he came back, the father started counting all his travelings. He said, "Here you slept. Here it was cold. All different. Here you weren't feeling good. All different things." Says the Malbim. What's pshat over here in Rashi? Rashi, the Medrash is telling us the Kadosh Baruch Hu first had to take us on all these trips in order to cleanse us from all the tumah that had come upon us, and we absorbed the Mitzrayim from all the tumah. We know our Mitzrayim was the Eretz Zima, the most horrible place for Zima, and we needed to cleanse ourselves. We had to travel from place to place, go through Nisyonis, change our clothes, until we were roy to go into Eretz Yisrael. That's how the Malbim touches up this medrash. Also, he goes a little further and he says the pshat is that wanted Moshe Rabbeinu to tell him exactly for Klal Yisrael to know where each place where they made Hashem angry and where they were chaytei. So they go into Eretz Yisrael, they'll know what they did wrong and why it would not happen again. Therefore, they realize this masa, this happened, that you got angry. By Meriva, by the bear, Miriam, by the Meriva, by the Ego, by all these different places. In order that they should realize that they did Averis over there and what caused their Averis, and now that they were clean, they should keep in mind that these things should not reoccur in Eretz Yisrael. That was number one. So that's the first shot of the Malbim. The Ramban quotes the name of the Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to say over here, Al Pi Hashem, to teach us something else. That we should realize that when it comes to these Masoyis, there was many Nisyonis there that Klal Yisrael went through. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them Taivus, He gave them the Mon, He gave them the Be'er, He protected them from with the Anani HaKavoid. But it's very easy, and He took him into a midbar where there was nothing there. Like we saw in previous parshas, there was no food, there was no shelter, and everything was yesh ma'ayin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created nisim and flois to Ki'ilu. They were living in a city like we live, where we had everything we needed: housing, food, etc., etc. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Al Pi Hashem, make sure you write this all down, because it's very shaykh in the earth later on. People are going to say that there were no nisim here. They were living near the city. They were living in places where there was food and shelter. There were no major nisim. Everything was beteva. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted everything written down now to show that all these masois that occurred through the midbar, where all the nisim happened, would never be forgotten. And Klal Yisrael went through these things, and we know what happened, and we can learn from each one how to act and appreciate the nisim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught us. And like we saw from the Mefarshim, from the Maral, that many of these in Yonah are to teach us midas of Amunah and B'tachon. And we have our own nisyonis. We see what could happen in the Midbar. There were so many nisyonis, and still there was a moon and betachin that Hashem helped us. That's number two. If you look in the Rebbeinu Bachai, he says another pshat over here that these psukim are referring to the Geula Acharayna. That Eila Maseh b'nei Yisrael asher yotzer Mitzrayim l'tzivoisav. And then it says, V'yichtav Moshe, we said it, Moitzoehem l'Maseyhem is referring to Yitzias Mitzrayim. Just like by Yitzias Mitzrayim, we had to go into the Midbar and everything happened over there for the Geula to occur in a complete way. So too in the time of the Geula Revius, which we're in now, we're going to have to return to the Midbar, like it says in the Pasuk in Yecheskel, like Tzisam el Midbar Amim. It's referring to the second Geula. The Masei L'Moitzaim, at the end of the Pasuk, is talking about the Geula that we're in, the Gullus we're in now. That just like that Gullus from Mitzrayim, we had to go into a Midbar to prepare us, to cleanse us, to get ready for the Chnas L'Eretz Yisrael. So too now also, in the last Gullus, we're going to have to go to a Midbar and go through all these Nisyonis in order to prepare ourselves to go into Eretz Yisrael again. Azoy Shteit in Bein Abachia in one pshat. And the Tzra Mar says another pshat also that that even though we went through all these gullus and HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't let us down, even though we were chayte and we didn't do the right things. And Alpha Pikein, Hashem kept giving us everything that we deserved without really deserving it. He gave us food, He gave us shelter, we kept doing bad things. So too over here, in our gullus, even though we're in a matzav that tremendous nisyonis that we live in the modern era of especially this door where they're going through with the internet and social media and all the distractions that a person can have, and other things that go on with mental illness in everyone's world. It was never happening so much. After came, we persevere, we go weiter, we build Torah, we learn Torah like there was never before. So even so, there's so many problems with people falling into chayshech and doing things that aren't right. Al Pikein says at Tzra Amar, we learned from the Dar Midbar, even though there were chatoyim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not turn his back on us. So too will come to the Geula Acharayna, will be the same thing. Even though we're falling into a darkness that was never before in many ways, it's still going to bring us into this tremendous awe of Mashiach because we persevere. And the Rosh Shmuel Yaakov Borges has a beautiful pshat over here also. It says in the Pasuk that Eila Maseh B'nei Yisrael, what's it's referring to is that he brings the Gemara in Eruvin, that the Gemara says that when when people live in huts, you're not allowed to count your tchum from the end of the city. You count it from the house itself. Says, therefore you're allowed to go from the house to the back and use whatever you need to do. Says the effect of Gemara, how could that be? L'chayra, it's not a kviyas. And Gemara says, learns out from the Dar Midbar that they were encamped over here, that they were kvuim. Val has a din of a kvua that's not stam. Maybe you can count your tchum from over there. Zakav Shmuel Yaakov, what's the pshat? They were traveling. The answer is that even when someone travels from place to place, but if he has a baby, the lady has a baby, that baby is not really traveling. Wherever she's going, his nourishment is constantly coming from the same place all the time. The people might be traveling, but that baby's kavua for his nourishment. Says Shmuel Yaakov Bornstein, the same thing, Klal Yisrael, even though they were constantly traveling, but it had a din kfiyas because their nourishment was constantly coming from Kadosh Baruch Hu, from the same sources, the Be'er, the Mon. There was no shinuyim in that. They had a din of a tinoik in that sense that they were kavuim. But Mela says that's what the Torah is teaching me over here. That even though Klal Yisrael was traveling, it was Ke'ilu they were kavua the whole time in one place. That was the nace that Kadosh Baruch Hu gave him. And what is that? I want to take that a little bit deeper. What is that teaching us? That they had such a kviyas? Because when a person travels from place to place and he is not kavua, that creates a tremendous instability in his emotional life when he has to deal with himself and his children and other people When you're not kavua, whether it's in the mitzias of constantly moving around, you're not kavua in your mind, whether it's that you're always that you don't have a parnasa kavua, or your Torah is not kavua, you're constantly not, or you're not grounded, or whether it's a man or a lady, that creates a tremendous instability. Kadosh Baruch Hu created this nace that even in the midbar, the Klai Yisrael had stability. They were considered in one place all the time, the same source. The bear, even though it traveled, the Gemara says it was because Elu was in one place. How's the shaykh? They had a bear travel wherever they went. But since the source was always the same source, that it didn't have kfiyas. That's such an important thing for us to learn from here. A person should work very hard in kfiyas, whether it's in his, however he has to do that, in his mind, he should always be kavua, with a plan, with a goal, constantly going on a track. Not good to be here, there. Then a person's mind is not kavua, and that creates problems for him. If a person is kavua, then he has a much more stable life, a good